Christopher, I'm not sure if you believe in heaven, but if you do you think Jerry Falwell is in it?
No, and I think it's a pity there isn't a hell for him to go to.
What is it about him that brings up such vitriol?
The empty life of this ugly little charlatan proves only one thing, that you can get away with the most extraordinary offenses to morality and to truth in this country if you'll just get yourself called reverend. Who would, even at your network, have invited on such a little toad to tell us that the attacks of September the 11th were the result of our sinfulness and were God's punishment if they hadn't got some kind of clerical qualification? People like that should be out in the street shouting and hollering with a cardboard sign and selling pencils from a cup. The whole consideration of this horrible little person is offensive to very, very many of us who have some regard for truth and for morality and who think that ethics do not require that lies be told to children by evil old men. That we're not told that people who believe like Falwell will be snatched up into heaven, where I'm glad to see he skipped the rapture, just found on the floor of his office, while the rest of us go to hell. How dare they talk to children like this? How dare they raise money from credulous people on their huckster-like Elmer Gantry radio stations and fly around in private jets as he did, giggling and sniggering all the time at what he was getting away with. Do you get an idea now of what I mean to say?
Yeah, no, I think you're making yourself very clear. I mean,
how dare he say, for example, that the Antichrist is already present amongst us and is an adult male Jew, while all the time fawning on the worst elements in Israel, with his other hand pumping anti-Semitic innuendos into American politics, along with his friends Robertson and Graham.
And yet there are...
encouraging the most extreme theocratic fanatics and maniacs on the West Bank and in Gaza not to give an inch of what he thought of as Holy Land to the people who already live there, undercutting and ruining every Democrat and secularist in the Jewish state in the name of God. He's done us an enormous disservice by this sort of demagogy.
What do you think it says about America and politics in America that he was so successful in mobilizing huge swaths of the country to come out and vote?
I'm not certain at all that he did deserve this reputation.
You don't think he does?
Well, I'm not certain that he was a mobilizer. We certainly hoped to be one. Well, the fact is that the country suffers to a considerable extent from paying too much by way of compliment to anyone who can describe themselves as a person of faith. Jimmy Swaggart, Ted Haggard, Chaucerian frauds, people who are simply pickpockets, and frauds who prey on the gullible.
Do you believe he believed what he spoke?
And the unwary? Of course not. He woke up every morning, as I say, pinching his chubby little flanks and thinking, I've got away with it again.
You think it was a complete fraud, really?
Yes.
You don't believe that? I mean, in his reading of the Bible, you don't think he was sincere in his? I mean, whether you agree or not with his reading the Bible, you don't think he was sincere in what he spoke?
No, I think he was a conscious charlatan and bully and fraud. I think if he read the Bible at all, and I would doubt that he could actually read any long book at all, that he did so only in the most hucksterish, as we say, Bible-pounding way. I'm going to repeat what I said before about the Israeli question. It's very important. Jerry Falwell kept saying to his own crowd, yeah, you've got to like the Jews because they can make more money in 10 minutes than you can make in a lifetime. He was always full, as his friends Robertson and Graham are and were, of anti-Semitic innuendo, yet in the most base and hypocritical way he encouraged the worst elements among Jewry. He got Menachem Begin to give him the Jabotinsky Medal, celebrating an alliance between Christian fundamentalism and Jewish fanaticism that has ruined the chances for peace in the Middle East. Lots of people are going to die and are already leading miserable lives because of the nonsense preached by this man and because of the absurd way that we credit anyone who can say they're a person of faith. Look, the president endangers us this way. He meets a KGB thug like Vladimir Putin, and because he's wearing a crucifix around his neck, says, I'm dealing with a man of faith who's a man of goodwill. Look what Putin's done to American and European interests lately. What has the president said to take back this absurd remark? It's time to stop saying that because someone preaches credulity and credulousness, claims it as a matter of faith, that we should respect them. The whole life of Falwell shows this is an actual danger to democracy, to culture, to civilization. That's what my book is all about.
The book is God is Not Great. Christopher Hitchens, appreciate you being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, Mr. Hitchens, I'd like to ask you what you think of, well, in this country, I guess, in particular, but you're experienced all throughout the world in religious fundamentalism, fanaticism, or whatever, but what do you think is the level of hypocrisy between those who espouse religion and fundamentalism or whatever, and what you think they really do believe as such and feel it within their spirit? And I just wondered if you could comment on that in this country and you know, perhaps throughout the world even.
Yes, it's a very interesting question, and one has to ask it all the time, and it's been lent some point recently by the revelation of Mother Teresa's loss of it may not be correct to say exactly total loss of faith, but great loss of conviction, of certainty in her faith. With someone like, say, Billy Graham, I think one can see all the symptoms of a self-conscious fraud. I mean, someone who doesn't believe any of this at all, but is a reasonably good businessman. I have a reason for thinking that, apart from the terrible appearance that he gives in public, I mean, the appallingly phony appearance, I mean to say. There was a Canadian Billy Graham, a contemporary of his, who north of the border was that crusade embodied, called James Templeton, who wrote a memoir about the point when he himself realized that what he was talking was complete nonsense, and no sensible person could believe it. And he went to Billy Graham and said, well, look, here's what's happened to me. Can you really go on saying this stuff? And Graham basically says, it's too late to stop now. And lots of people expect it of me, and, you know, we're in business. And that's what I think is the case with a surprisingly large amount of it. But I think that racketeering is and always has been an important part of religion. Some religions simply are rackets. Scientology, for example, or Mormonism. It's nothing more than the record of a successful con job. But the spiritual life can't be entirely reduced to that, and here's the problem. When you ask, do people really believe that, there can't be an answer to it, because they don't know any more than you do whether there was a virgin birth or a resurrection. If they say, I believe it, they're still believing in something that they have to know very probably didn't take place. So what are they asking us to believe? They're asking us to believe their propensity to faith, in other words, to take something on faith without argument or evidence. Well, if somebody wants me to believe that of them, that they will do that, then I will, but I feel that they're arguing against themselves and probably doing themselves an injustice.
On your definition of atheism or non-theism, it really embodies a diversity of views, such as agnosticism, what is normally called atheism, or this verificationism. Now, which of those do you hold to within this umbrella of atheism? Are you an atheist who asserts the proposition God does not exist, or do you simply withhold belief in God in the way the agnostic does?
Right. On some days, I'm a great. No, I'm not going to do you that much of a favor. On some days, I'm a great admirer of Thomas Huxley, who had the great debate with Bishop Wilberforce in Oxford at the Natural History Museum about Darwinism in the mid 19th century, and who was known as Darwin's bulldog. We would now say Darwin's pit bull, and who completely trounced the good bishop. But I can't thank him for inventing the term agnostic. And I can't thank him for some of his social Darwinist positions either, some of which are rather
unattractive. I need an answer to this. My time is fleeting.
Because I think agnosticism is evasive. To me, yes, if you talk about the power of the Holy Spirit and so forth, to me that is meaningless. It's to me, I'm sorry, I've tried. It's white noise. It's like saying there is only one God and Allah is his messenger. It's gibberish to me. There are many of us. I'm sorry, there are just many of us of whom this is the case. It may be true, it is true.
Okay, Mr. Hitchens, I got to press you here, because time is leaving.
Feel free.
What is your view exactly?
Press away.
Do you affirm God does not exist, or do you simply withhold belief?
I think once I have said that I've never seen any persuasive evidence for the existence of something, and I've made real attempts to study the evidence presented and the arguments presented, that I will go as far as to say, have the nerve to say, That it does not therefore exist, except in the minds of its, except in the Henry Jamesian subjective sense that you say of it being so real to some people in their own minds.
All right, yeah,
that it counts as a force in the world, yes.
Okay, so you do affirm then that God does not exist. Now, what I want to know, and do you have any justification for that?
I think I've come unwired in some horrible way.
You're fine.
Are you sure?
Do you have any arguments leading to the conclusion that God does not exist?
Well, I would rather, I think, I'm wondering if I'm boring anybody now. I would rather say, I'd rather state it in reverse and say I find all the arguments in favor to be fallacious or unconvincing. And I'd have to add that though this isn't my reason for not believing in it, that I would be very depressed if it was true. But that's a quite different thing. I don't say of atheism that it's at all morally superior. That would be very risky. I wouldn't admit that it was at all morally inferior either, but we can at least be acquitted on the charge of wishful thinking.
I wonder if that's the case. Would you agree that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence?
Well, you know, I'm not sure that I would agree.
Okay. Let's turn to the moral argument and talk about that a little bit. I think you've misunderstood the moral argument.
Given the stakes, Doctor, sorry, given the stakes, I mean, you're not saying, we're not talking about unicorns or tooth fairies or leprechauns here. We're talking about an authority that would give other human beings the right to tell me what to do in the name of God. So for a claim like that, if there's no evidence for it, it seems to me not a small question.
No, it's certainly not a small question.
Because you're making a very, very, very large claim. Your evidence had better be absolutely magnificent, it seems to me. And it's the lack of magnificence, I think, that began to strike me first.